Hello and welcome to Console Christians, where we are discovering the biblical truths in today's video games. My name is Conrad, and today we are looking at the game Playroom VR, which is actually a free game that you can get. That just because it's free doesn't mean that it's not any good. On the contrary, and it's actually a group of mini games. So let's look at what games there are. So here is the main menu for Playroom VR. You can see, so there are all the games you can play. So this is Ghost House, where you're like Ghostbusters. This is Toy Wars, where you're in a bedroom fighting toys. This is Monster Escape. It's like a Godzilla creature that you have to fight. This is Robot Rescue. It's like a platformer. You have to rescue robots, as the title suggests. This is Mini Bots. It's not really a game. You spend the money you get when you win the games. That's Cat and Mouse. You have to be mice that get cheese. You try to not get caught by the cat. And there's Wanted, which we are going to look at now. My daughter will be playing with me, so you'll hear her voice. So they're showing you how to play and all that stuff here. And so this is a game where you need at least two people, because one person sees one thing and one person sees something else. There's one person that has a gun, which is this guy here, and there's a little reference there to our last episode where you see a bird poo go into the guy's eye. That you listen to the last episode to get that. So there's a guy with a gun here, and he'll see a bunch of people, and one of them is the bad guy, but he doesn't know who the bad guy is. There is someone else, which we're gonna see his perspective. He knows who the bad guy is, and he has to tell the guy with the gun who the bad guy is. So there's some cooperation required here. So here we can see who the bad guy is, and the first guy is there's only one person, so it's kind of obvious who it is. But now there's two people. There's actually three people, and now there's a little bit more challenge as to who the person is. You need to be a bit more descriptive. There's a clock you see at the right-hand side.
Hat, eyes, and Band-Aid.
And the time is running out, and you have a temptation to not wait for the complete description. Although I'm not really worried about that here, because the time ran out. And you jump the gun, and you end up shooting the wrong person.
Hat, eyes, and mustache.
So something else is, you'll notice there's one guy whose face is kind of
Hat and eyes.
hidden, and you see him turn his head, and you can't really shoot him until he turns his head to see what he looks like.
Hat, eyes, mustache.
So that's another kind of wrinkle that makes things a little difficult. So we saw in the game Wanted that it's impossible to play this game alone. You have to have one person shooting the gun, the other person describing the bandit, and that makes me think of a verse in the Bible that is in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 4, verse 9. And it says, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken." So we see there's a whole bunch of examples there. You might have someone attacking you, and if you're just on your own, then the attacker might have a good chance of overpowering you and getting what they want, your money or whatever it is that you have. But if there's two of you and an attacker comes, then you might have a good chance of not getting harmed by the attacker. And this just goes on with anything in life. It's just better to have more than one person in your life than just you. This also makes me think of another verse in the Bible, which is in Exodus chapter 17. This is Moses, story of Moses, and they are at war. His people are at war with the Amalekites. So in chapter 11 it says, as long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. So there's a cool story about Moses, and all he had to do was keep his hands raised, and the Israelites would win. But as soon as his hands lowered, he got tired, then the Amalekites would win. And so we see that he could not do this on his own. He had to have Aaron and Hur holding his hands up. He could not do things on his own. As often as I like to do things on my own, there's always a point where I just need to be with someone else. That we are made so that we need others in our lives. So let's move on to Monster Escape. So this is Monster Escape, and one person is on the ground running. The other person is the monster, the Godzilla type monster, destroying helicopters and buildings, and they're all falling on the ground. And you gotta, if you're on the ground running, your job is to avoid these things that are falling from the sky. So you can tell where the things are going to be falling because you see the skull and crossbones. And now things change, because before you were on the defensive, now you're on the offensive. Instead of running away from the creature, now you are going to be getting some weapons that you can use to fight the creature and hopefully take him out. So the weapons are kind of unconventional, like pianos. There's some barrels, video game cabinets, there's a plant, a sofa, and the creature is doing a pretty good job of dodging all these things that are being thrown at it. So we saw that the Monster Escape game is kind of in two parts, and that's a lot like how the Bible is. The Bible is in two parts. We've got the Old Testament and the New Testament, and I've heard a lot of people describe the difference between the Old and New Testament. They focus on God's character, and they think that God is a different person or entity in the Old Testament than in the New Testament, because we hear a lot about how God is a God of judgment in the Old Testament. He sent Adam and Eve out of the garden. He made the flood. He had Sodom and Gomorrah. Did all this destruction and people dying. And then you go to the New Testament with Jesus, and God is the God of love and of forgiveness of sins. And so it just seems like that we have two different gods in the beginning of the Bible and the end of the Bible. And that's how it would look if you were just kind of skimming through the Bible and not really digging deep and seeing what the Bible really says. So let's do that. I guess we're not going to dig too deep, but I can show you a few verses that show that the God of the Old Testament is pretty much the same as the God of the New Testament. So let's look in Acts chapter 5, where this is in the New Testament, and this is apparently the God of love is the one who is in the New Testament here. So let's look at chapter 5, Acts chapter 5, verse 1. And it says, "Now a man named Ananias, together with his wife Sapphira, also sold a piece of property. With his wife's full knowledge, he kept back part of the money for himself, but brought the rest and put it at the apostles' feet. Then Peter said, 'Ananias, how is it that Satan has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and have kept for yourself some of the money you received for the land? Didn't it belong to you before it was sold? And after it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? You have not lied just to human beings, but to God.' When Ananias heard this, he fell down and died, and great fear seized all who heard what had happened." So Ananias was on his own. His wife wasn't with him. And eventually his wife comes, and the same thing happens. She lies, and it says in verse 10, "At that moment, she fell down at his feet and died. Then the young men came in, and finding her dead, carried her out and buried her beside her husband." Wow. So these people sinned, and they were deceitful, and they died. It seems pretty drastic. I don't know how many times I've been deceitful in my life, and I had a chance to repent and go on with my life. I didn't die. So this is really drastic, and pretty much what people thought of God in the Old Testament. We see the same thing happening in the New Testament. And there's lots of talks of judgment in other places in the New Testament as Jesus was doing his ministry. You look in Revelation, there's talk of judgment. So let's look in the Old Testament and see if we can find some example of how God is a God of love in the Old Testament. So let's go to Jonah. You know the story about Jonah and the great fish. He got swallowed because God wanted him to preach to the Israelites' enemies. So, here's what it says in chapter 3. In chapter 3 in verse 4. It says, "Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth." So the Israelites heard the message from God, and they repented. And God said, "Well, oh, you repented? Well, I guess I don't have to destroy you then." And this made Jonah mad, because these are the Israelites' enemies, and he was hoping that God would destroy them. But we'll go to chapter 4. In verse 2, it says, "He prayed to the Lord, 'Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? This is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity.'" So listen to the words that Jonah used for God here. We're in the Old Testament. This is the God of judgment, and Jonah says that he's gracious, compassionate, slow to anger, abounding in love. So there we go. God is the same in the Old Testament. He's the same in the New Testament. He's the same now. He doesn't change, which is kind of a good thing, because I like to have faith in someone who is not going to be changing all the time. I want to be someone who I want to have faith in God that is rock solid. So we're going to be having a service this Sunday on the Milestone Church's YouTube channel, 11 a.m. Eastern. Please tune in for that, and I will see you next time on Console Christian.